of the Witch's BookTube. And today we're going to be talking about the Practical Sigil Magic book by Frater UD. It's a small book. And you'll note that we're doing another sigil book because I loved it so much. And the book that we did was Sigil Witchery, which I loved so much that I created the whole March box around that. We're about to send that out. I wanted to take the deep dive into sigil magic further because she approaches sigil magic through a very intuitive method, which I really appreciated and support, and it really resonated with me, which is why I sent the book out. This book goes into an analysis of the method that is probably the most common and one that she references, and she being Laura Zakroff. She was the author of the Sigil Witchery book, and that is the spare method. The spare method, or the word method, is the most popular, I think, method of creating sigils out there. It's also fairly easy, and I wanted to give you all an alternative, right? So that you had as many tools in your sigil toolbox as you could have. So this is a very knowledgeable writer. I would say that the first half of the book was excellent in terms of giving you really applicable, concrete methods on creating sigils. And I'm going to show you a couple of pictures. So there are three methods that he talks about. It's the word method, the mantric method, and the pictorial method. And having all of those tools at your disposal, I think, is really empowering. I like them, actually. I like all methods. I like the word method, the pictorial method. I'm not a great drawer, but I think that it's actually really powerful as well. And I love Laura Zakroff's method as well. So those are things that if you have them in your kit, in your toolkit, right, your witch's toolkit, you can use a combination of all of those things, and they inform how you create this potent symbol for your magic. I think that's really great. And this book does a great way of walking you through how to create each of those methods or each of those types of sigils. In that sense, I love the book. The other thing I liked about this book is that he talks about later on in the book why this works, why sigil magic works, and how it relates to our subconscious. And I think that that's something that's going to come up again and again and again, not just because I am a psychology nut, but because our inner workings are core to how we create our witch's life in the world. It is core to our magic. It is core to our meditation and connection with nature, with ourselves, with other people. It's core to how we access our psychic abilities, our intuition. These are important things to know. How does the human psyche work, and how does yours work specifically, I think is really important. So he talks about that. Here's what I don't like about the book. There's two things. The first thing is that he can get a little noisy in terms of just extra. There's an excess of words. There are a lot, in the very beginning, a lot of references to people and history points and development points throughout English magical society history in a way that assumes that you know what he's talking about. And if you don't know who these people are, if you don't know what that history is, it can kind of leave you a little jarred because you're reading and you're moving along this thread to learn how to do this thing. And then he throws a couple of paragraphs in there of this historical notation, and you're like, what? Who? I don't know. He doesn't actually go in depth as to who these people are because there's an assumption that you would know. That's not awful. It's not bad, but it's jarring in the reading. It makes the reading not as smooth and quick as you'd like it to be. He does some of that in the back as well. So when he gets to the chapter as to why this works, it felt to me like I literally had to trudge through a lot of this excess stuff before I got to the meat of what he was trying to say, which was very valuable. But right? It was a little ugh. And as things go, for not liking that part of the book, it's not that big a deal because there's a lot of very valuable information in this book that I think that we should all have. Now, the second thing that I did not like about this book is a little bit more serious to me, and I wanted to cover it. So in working with sigils, you create your intention, right? And you work with that intention to create this sigil, this symbol. And there's a whole process that you go through with that. And once you have your sigil created, you need to activate it, right? And so he talks about different ways to activate that symbol into your subconscious. Again, psychology comes into play in a big way. So activating a sigil is about bypassing our conscious mind, the mind that has names and associations and day-to-day understanding of our lives, right? Because, did you see that? All right, I'll have to pick her up later, but that's a crone walking stick I created a long time ago. Interesting. Anyway, I'm not even gonna stop. But what was I saying? Our subconscious works in the realm of imagery, associations, symbols, and oftentimes our subconscious is working independent of our conscious mind in many, many ways. So when we go to sleep, when we dream, it's our subconscious that's dreaming. It's our subconscious that is working through our lives, our day, our issues in associations and symbols that aren't exactly what they appear to be, but they represent other things, right? So we need to embed that symbol into our subconscious. And the way we do that is through something called an activation. There are different ways to do that. One of the ways to do that is through sex magic. So he talks about how the easiest, quickest way to get to where you want to get to is usually the best. And sex magic can do that, where you masturbate, and at the moment of, and this isn't just necessarily masturbating for the sake of the pleasure, although pleasure is necessary, but it's literally masturbating for the sake of reaching climax, so that you open your mind and you are releasing yourself of the day-to-day of your conscious. This is where I always envision my conscious to be, so that you can then look at the sigil, and then your subconscious picks it up in a really potent way, because you are in that kind of halfway liminal space of an orgasm, and you've then bypassed the conscious, embedded it in your subconscious, and then you can move on and let that work in the background while you do your life, right? Sex magic is the easiest. If it's something that you're not comfortable with, if it's something that just feels impractical or whatever, he lists a bunch of other things that you can do. This is where I have my issue, because what he talks about is, and I want to look at it because I had so many notes in the margins like, you've got to be kidding me, dude. The other way to internalize sigils is to do so spasmodically. I don't know why he uses the word spasmodically the way he does. This book was also translated from the German. However, it's easy to read. You can't tell that it was, but for whatever reason, the way he used this word felt odd to me until I kept reading. There are ways to also cross the threshold state between conscious and the subconscious that require overexertion, overexhaustion, activating intense emotions like anger, fear, doing things like holding your breath while in an uncomfortable position until you reach just the point of almost dying, and then looking at the sigil. And I'm like, dude, really? Like, this is not necessary. I found this to be a little distressing. I found that it just seems ridiculous that you'd have to traumatize your body in order to access your subconscious. There are other ways. And if the sex magic doesn't apply or doesn't work for you, or it's something that you don't want to try, you can do a trance gaze meditation, something that you would employ for scrying, right? That gaze that we use when we start to scry, when you get into a trance by gazing at something in a very specific way. You can implant symbols into your subconscious this way. You don't have to overexert. You don't have to hold your breath. You don't have to get near death. Like, I don't understand. So this part of the book I felt was a little traumatizing, a little distressing, and very unnecessary. Other than that, I liked it. So this is one of those books where you have to kind of weed through things. I don't recommend activating in the way that he recommends. I do, however, recommend sex magic. I think that masturbating and climax is a great way to access your subconscious. But if that's not for you, it's not for everyone. There are other ways to do it that are not going to tax or traumatize your body. I don't think that is necessary. There are other ways. We've all got other skills that we can develop that will help with that. I loved the description of the 3 methods of creating sigil, which is the word method, the mantric method, and the pictorial method. I'm not going to go into those. He goes into them and they're great. Some of the parts were verbose, but he also talks about why this works, which I think is really important. I actually may just do a really easy to read blog post on what the methods are, why it works, and how to activate them, because the part about activating sigils in this book I did find to be questionable and probably not advisable. In fact, not advisable at all. So yes, so this is one of those books where I do recommend it. I think that it's very helpful. The information about the sigils and how to create them I thought was really great. And then there are other parts of the book where I thought were really problematic. So you just need to employ your critical thinking skills and take what you need, leave the rest. But I do recommend it because I think that it's really, this book is an opportunity to take your sigil skills deeper. I would consider this like an intermediate book, like a next level in the sigil magic. I don't actually think he shares any specific types of spells, but he does go into depth as to how to create an intention. Really helpful. Those things were really, really helpful. And how to design the actual sigil in a way that keeps stripping it down of the excess marks until you get one simple, concise, but powerfully packed sigil. So helpful, really, really helpful. Just take what you need, leave the rest, and don't do some extraordinary spasmodically induced activation. I don't recommend that. You don't need to do that. A scrying trance glance or gaze is really all you need to activate a sigil. There you go. Practical Sigil Magic by Frater UD. I will link to it below. I recommend it. Just read it with a critical mind. And in the US, it's $15.95. It doesn't have a price for any other country. It's by Llewellyn. I will link to it below. Have a wonderful week. Bye, everyone.